Hey, welcome to Vitamin B12 Extra Dosage number 2. I'm your host, Chris Armstrong. With me, as always, Garrett Sauls and EJ Hayes. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're here to talk about really, there are like 3 or 4 or 5 seasons in an actual football season. And you have your preseason, you have your uh, non conference play, postseason, and then award season. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about award season. And the first topic we're going to talk about is the Heisman race. There have been 3 nominees selected to go to New York this year, and Baker Mayfield was not one of them. The Big 12 had no representatives this year, which I guess is okay. But if you look, Mayfield's numbers are relatively close to the other quarterback in the race. So, real quickly, guys, did Baker Mayfield get snubbed by not at least getting an invite to New York? EJ?
Well, I mean, really nobody was really talking about Mayfield except for a couple people, and they were kind of crowning him, something special. He really didn't have. He didn't have elite numbers. Now, I'm, I'm kind of confused on the Heisman. Is the Heisman numbers, or is it the best player in the country, or is it the best player in the country for your team? Like, because I think he's not the best player in the country, but he may be the best player in the country for his team. Because when his team loses him, they're a whole different team. Now that happens to a lot of teams, including Oklahoma State, probably including Clemson, etc. But I think OU is extremely balanced and crazy good with him, and they're simply not very good without him. I think the TCU game showed that. So I don't necessarily think that he was completely snubbed, but if the Heisman is the best player for his team in the country, I think then he possibly was snubbed.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think, it's interesting to me because I had always gathered the impression the past few years anyway that the Heisman, kind of like you said, it's kind of like the NBA MVP. It's the best player on the best team, like a Steph Curry or a Kevin Durant or whatever. But I think this year and in a few years we've kind of seen that the Heisman committee kind of does what they want. I mean, I'm not going to argue that any of these players on here aren't deserving. I mean, Derrick Henry broke the SEC record for single-season rushing yards, I think. Christian McCaffrey, I think, broke some other records. I think he may have broken a Barry Sanders record, if I'm not mistaken. And Deshaun Watson, I mean, he's a good quarterback, but is he the best quarterback ever? I don't know. And so I think if we're using the metrics that, hey, this is, the most valuable player to a team, then Baker Mayfield's got to be it. And he made some waves, and he won some big games. So I think it was a snub that he got left out. I mean, the Big 12 didn't get left out of the college football playoff this year, so they got to get left out somewhere, right? So why not the Heisman? But I think Mayfield earned it, but maybe the Heisman committee is saying, no, this is your first year really playing. Maybe we'll wait and see what you do next year, and then you'll be in the consideration. Maybe that's their line of thought. I don't really know, but I think he was deserving, and I think it's somewhat of a snub. If you're going to put Tim Tebow through 2 years, come on.
Yeah, so real quick, did the Texas loss keep him out of the Heisman race?
Absolutely. I mean, not that the other two guys, didn't have losses. Like everybody's had a loss, right? But he was like semi non-existent in that game. I felt like, it was like I was real confused when OU lost that game because I really truly thought they were just crushing people at that moment, and they crushed people after that moment. So I'm going to say yes, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting though because Mayfield, if you look at his stats, he probably doesn't have the highest stats in the NCAA for a quarterback, and you look at the past 3 or 4 games and OU won because of their running game. Yeah, Baker Mayfield had some elusiveness, and he got some touchdowns, some rushing touchdowns. But in terms of just quarterbacking, he was more of a game manager than he was, You know,
He was very efficient though. Like his stats weren't like high numbers, but his efficiency was
yeah,
extremely good. Like that's one thing that he was extremely efficient all year. And efficiency makes people have to guard you. It makes people have to spy you because you're so fast. Which what does that do? Opens up the run for your stud running backs. Um, so really quick, I want to know who you think's going to win. Who's your pick to win? Because I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey's stats. That dude's
yeah.
a stud.
I
Like,
think I think McCaffrey should win, but I don't think he will win. I think it's going to be Derrick Henry because SEC bias will reign supreme. You know.
I don't know. Deshaun Watson, 3,500 yards, 887 rushing yards, 41 total touchdowns. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't lose. Well, what am I saying? Yeah, Clemson. Yeah, that guy didn't lose.
That's true.
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually tough.
It's hard to say.
I think they all deserve it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Mayfield should have been invited to New York just based on his facial hair game this year.
Yeah.
So yeah. Let's talk about Big 12 All-Americans. Big 12 actually had several first team and second team All-Americans this year. At wide receiver on first team, Corey Coleman from Baylor, Josh Doxson from TCU, and on the O-line, Spencer Drango from Baylor. Unsurprisingly, probably, no first team Big 12 on defense. But there is a specialist, Morgan Burns, is a returner from K-State, made first team.
Mm-hmm.
Does it surprise you guys that there were no defensive players on the All-American list, first team?
I mean, as a Big 12 fan, yes, but if we're talking about what we expect from the nation in terms of awards, no. You know, there are some blogs, some OSU blogs that pointed out that Joey Bosa, who is I think he's a defensive lineman, his stats compared to Emmanuel Ogba's are just completely dwarfed by Ogba's. Ogba's far and out statistically better. But how do you argue that? You know, there's the whole how many plays you play and this and that. So I'm not surprised that a Big 12 player isn't on there, but that doesn't mean I don't think an Emmanuel Ogba or an Andrew Billings shouldn't be on there.
Yeah, who's the safety for West Virginia that got hurt early?
Carl Joseph.
Yeah, I think he was like the type of player that the Big 12 could have put on first team if he was played all year. He was really, truly a game changer for West Virginia. And I think they win 2 or 3 more games with him. I believe he's that important. I think a guy like that and a guy like Ogba could make first team, but, they didn't. And, what are you going to do?
Yeah, so second team we had Baker Mayfield at QB, Sterling Shepard from OU at wide receiver. Then we had Andrew Billings and Emmanuel Ogba. Billings, of course, from Baylor, Ogba from Oklahoma State, both on the defensive line, second team. Zach Sanchez from OU made it.
Wait, what?
Zach Sanchez made the USA Today All-American team, second team.
That's a typo, right? You're got to be kidding me.
If that doesn't tell you this list is suspect, then I don't know what.
Are there no other corners in the SEC that they could put in there? This is ridiculous. I'm going to call somebody. Maybe my senator. Wow.
So, what do you guys think they saw in Sanchez that led them to include him on this list? I
think they saw the OU on his jersey. I don't know. Maybe I haven't watched enough of Sanchez throughout the season to know if he was quality or not. All I know is in Bedlam, granted it was a beatdown of Oklahoma State, but it wasn't from Zach Sanchez. I can tell you that because every big play, pretty much every touchdown responsible was because Zach Sanchez got blown in coverage. So I don't know.
And if you listen to OU fans who actually pay attention to,
they're hot on him. Yeah, they know.
Oh yeah, he's hot and cold. He'll do a pick six and then he'll get burned 3 times, and that's just he'll have a good game, he'll have a bad game. That's not All-American material to me. I mean, I don't know. He had a few pick sixes and he had some interceptions, but I just don't see that. But everybody else I actually pretty much agree with.
Yeah, I think everyone else is fairly deserving in their own right. I wouldn't argue with a lot of these. I mean, Leonard Fournette, running back, Ezekiel Elliott, those guys definitely. Which interesting though that. Oh no, that's second team. Sorry, I'm sure Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey are on the first team. Yep, there they are. Okay.
And Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty impressive the Big 12 put 2 wide receivers on the first team. I mean, obviously that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, so, okay, let's get into the actual Big 12 awards. They hosted their awards tonight or last night or something, and they released all their names. So, Offensive Player of the Year, Baker Mayfield, quarterback from Oklahoma State. What do you guys think of this pick?
I wouldn't argue with it. I think in terms of offense, you could maybe make a case for Trevon Boykin, but I think that game against TCU is probably, the TCU Oklahoma State game is probably what put Boykin out of it because Boykin threw a few too many picks there. So I wouldn't argue with Baker Mayfield being up there. I think he deserves it. In terms of just, again, like we were talking about, being valuable to your team, he pretty much fits that description pretty well. And just his presence in general, I think, it's impressive. So.
Yeah, he certainly means a lot to OU, and you can't argue that when that guy's on the field, he's a game changer. Like, because he's efficient with his arm, he's insane with his feet, and when he's in a bind, he just gets out of it. It's amazing. So, he deserves it. I think if Rudolph plays in Bedlam, I think and somehow beats OU, I think he's up for it because his stats are up there and he meant a lot to us. I think anytime you're splitting offensive snaps with another quarterback, you're just simply never going to win that, even though he almost had 4,000 yards passing.
Right.
Especially in the red when touchdowns come into the equation and people look at your stats.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I feel like this, and I'm not saying this player should have won over Baker Mayfield by any means, but I think a lot of people overlook DeAndre Washington from Texas Tech. The guy had 1,800 yards this season. That's a lot of yards. I mean, Tech, we consider them completely air raid, but again, it's kind of like the Baylor. It's kind of like Oklahoma State in 2011. It's kind of like OU this year. Everyone thinks, they're air raid, they're spread, but it's those running backs who are racking up the yards.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an impressive performance. Not necessarily award-worthy, but duly noted.
Blake Jarwin got
tight end, yeah.
Wow. Hey, I love that pick. That guy's a stud.
Yeah, so Defensive Players of the Year for the Big 12 were split between Andrew Billings and Emmanuel Ogbah. Is Billings the one that didn't know who Ogbah was?
No.
Okay.
Billings is actually talented.
Yeah, he's the beast. He's an absolute beast defensive tackle. He's a monster.
Yeah, he had quite a few great games. I think he wrecked Oklahoma State. I know he did. He's been a disruptive force throughout the entire season versus the meme generator. So.
Yeah, the other guy, he just shrank this year. I don't know. He was too busy showing off his abs or whatever that picture is. Tired of seeing it.
So, go ahead.
I was just saying I'm okay with them splitting it. I feel like they're both pretty deserving.
Yeah, I'm glad that Emmanuel Ogbah got at least a split. I mean, it could have went Andrew Billings because I believe he was extremely dominant this year, which is awesome. We're talking about a Baylor defensive person being completely dominant. That shows a lot for Baylor, I'm telling you.
What has this world come to?
I know.
There's a Baylor defensive player.
Things are changing, man.
But actually, now that we kind of make fun of that, but this is actually the first Oklahoma State defensive player of the year for the Big 12. So congrats to all those guys, Baker, Andrew, Emmanuel, all of them. Bob Stoops winning Big 12 Coach of the Year. How do you guys feel about this, besides your personal bias?
Can't argue.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
You can't argue with it. I mean, he literally outcoached Mike Gundy. That hurts to say that, but it happened, and there's nothing else you can say about it. He outcoached him defensively, offensively, every phase of the game. So anytime you just rule Coach Gundy, I'm thinking you've got something going on. Doesn't happen very much.
I think of, Bob Stoops, I think, should probably win it. Obviously, he won the Big 12. The only loss they had was to Texas, and but OU's got the blue chips. They weren't a bad team last year. When I look at Oklahoma State, and they came off a 7-5 season, still one of the youngest teams, and to go 10-2, I think exceeded everyone in the Big 12's expectations. So I think there's something to be said of that. But yeah, Coach of the Year should probably go to the person who won the Big 12. That only makes sense. But give Mike Gundy credit for really taking this team and overachieving.
Well, I think it says a lot after the Texas loss because the entire Sooner Nation was crushed by that loss. I mean,
right.
Their whole lives were over. And I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but people were literally like throwing their jerseys down and, that their season's over. They're done. So the fact that we went from I'm done, I hate the Sooners to the playoffs, that's a pretty that's one heck, especially showing the teams that he played.
Right.
Whatever circumstance it was, right? That's pretty impressive coaching.
Yeah, after that Texas loss, they were just unstoppable. So I think there's a lot to say about that. So.
Okay, so as we wrap up this extra dosage, first of all, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. Real quick, who is your non-Bob Stoops, non-Mike Gundy Big 12 Coach of the Year for 2015?
This is a hard one because I feel like a lot of good coaches kind of didn't, whether the circumstances dictated or not, I don't know, but a lot of them didn't really.
I'm not going to say Bryles because Bryles has the horses, and he didn't. So he, as his quarterback started falling, he kept the upward movement, and then it leveled off, and then he just crushed. I think Gary Patterson deserves it. Because we all forget how many defensive players he lost in the first couple weeks. I'm talking like maybe 7 or 8 starters on defense. I mean, we lost like 1 or 2 the whole season, and it was brutal. But we had guys behind him. But you're not going to replace 7 guys. And he's known for defense, so he had to reinvent the wheel and rely on offense, which I'm sure he wasn't comfortable with. And he still, finished, 9-2 or whatever that was. So I'm going to say, Gary Patterson almost pulling off the OU win. That was pretty dadgum impressive.
It could have been a different season for TCU.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to say behind those two, Gary Patterson.
I'd agree. And for those reasons that you mentioned, I think just him recovering from those injuries, I think TCU may have been the most plagued with injuries from the get-go for the entire season, not just the back stretch like most of the other teams, but he was down, a all Big 12 defense essentially, and then later on down the stretch, Trevon Boykin and Josh Oxen going out, and they still go and almost beat OU, and they go and beat Baylor in the rivalry, in a close game. I mean, that's good coaching, to coach those second, third string guys to play to that level of competition.
Okay, so I lied. I have one more question, and I just want your reaction. Lincoln Riley, OU offensive coordinator, recognized as the 2015 Broyles Award winner, which goes to the top coordinator in the Big 12.
In the Big 12 or the nation?
In college football, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was the best in the nation.
It is the best in the nation. My apologies.
No, that's a big deal.
Lincoln Riley honored for the top coordinator in the nation. What is your reaction? And should Kendall Browse from Baylor? It's awesome that Kendall and Lincoln were both in it, and those are the 2 offensive coordinators from the Big 12. What's your reaction to Riley winning?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say I think Riley deserves it. I think OU's offense last season was a little questionable. We saw them kind of struggle through some things. They kind of found a run game later on with Samaje Perine and everything like that. But this year they've shown the most balance, I think, out of any Big 12 team, just in terms of the pass, the run, the type of plays they do, how they scheme against other opponents, especially in the second half of the season. I would think that in terms of just balanced offenses around the country, he does a pretty good job. But I don't know enough about offenses throughout all of college football to necessarily compare him to like a Clemson, who is also very balanced, or maybe someone else in a different conference. Definitely no SEC team, but I'm sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, again, the word you kept using, and I love it, is balance. I mean, the Big 12 is pass happy, or we're this or that. The funny thing is a lot of those guys like Kendall Briles or Art Briles or the whole Briles, Baylor thing, they are super balanced. Like, people don't realize how good Baylor's running game is.
Yep.
I think the difference between those two guys, and I think Kendall Briles in the next 5 years, or maybe less than that, will grow into a pretty much dominant offensive coordinator. I think he does a great job with play calling. He sets things up to go deep, and I think that's the name of the game. I think that they rely on the fourth down conversion and the kind of the silly things to keep going a little too much, and for that reason, I believe Lincoln Riley kind of takes the to me, he takes the edge. I don't want to face either one of them. I think both of them are good, especially when they have the guys to do it. But I just felt like Kendall Briles is still trying to figure out how to sustain drives without having to go for it on 4th and 7. 4th and 1, 4th and inches, get up there and do it. You've got it every time. But if you're going for it on 4th and 7, you're playing scared, and I don't think you're comfortable in that situation. I saw too many non-comfortable situations for Kendall, and I wasn't seeing that with Lincoln Riley. He was just dominating, and then if they stopped him, they'd punt it, rely on their defense, and I felt like that's why he's wins it. I mean, it's pretty impressive winning the whole thing. I saw that and I was like, wow, this is his first year at OU, isn't it? Or was he here last year?
No, this may be his first year.
Yeah,
because I keep hearing all the OU fans say, "Oh, the air raid, he's installing it," and I didn't hear that last year. So
yeah, so you got to remember the first 3 or 4 games they were pass happy, and they were running those running backs like less than 10 carries a game. And I think that after the Texas loss, everything changed. Mm-hmm. They went back to balance, and I think that's when OU's lights came on. Like, they were just crushing souls, and it started with that Kansas State 55-0 game. Like, that is brutality, guys. 55-0 at K-State. Wow.
Yeah. You don't do that to the Wizard.
No.
All right, well, let's get out of here. Thank you guys for watching this. This is Extra Dosage number 2 for the Vitamin B12 podcast. We are going to be here next week with another Extra Dosage, and then we're going to have a special couple of days where we're going to release our own bowl previews right before the bowl starts. So be looking at that towards the end of December. But thanks again for joining us for this Extra Dosage. Be sure to subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. EJ and Garrett, you guys are my co-MVPs.
Oh,
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
No matter what anybody else says, you guys are the co-MVPs for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.